He called me a burden, while sipping wine in Paris. Didn't know I was still on the call. Didn't know I heard everything, how they planned to take the house my grandmother left me. That's when I decided, they'd never step foot in it again. My name is Emma Davis. I'm 29 years old and for most of my life I played the role of the dutiful daughter. Quiet. Responsible. Helpful. I never asked for much, just a sliver of warmth and acknowledgement from the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I didn't grow up in a warm household. We weren't poor, not exactly, but we were always one broken appliance away from disaster. My father, Robert, worked long hours at the factory and came home bitter. My mother, Diana, floated from receptionist job to receptionist job, complaining about her coworkers and watching reality TV on the worn-down couch. They reminded me daily of the sacrifices they made. If I wanted new school shoes, I got a lecture about budgeting. If I asked about college, my dad would scoff. College is for people who think they're better than everyone else. You should be grateful we put food on the table. And yet, despite the tension, I clung to the hope that someday they'd see me. Really see me. Not just as a mouth to feed or a future caretaker, but as a person. The only person who ever made me feel that way was my grandmother, Elizabeth. She was my dad's mother and somehow she turned out entirely different from him. Where my parents saw limits, she saw opportunity. Elizabeth had built her own life, investing in small properties, flipping them and renting them out. She didn't drive a fancy car or flaunt her wealth, but she was comfortable, secure, and generous in a quiet, unwavering way. Every weekend I visited her. Her home, a beautiful colonial on Magnolia Drive, was a refuge. We baked, gardened, played cards and talked about everything. She asked about school, my friends, my dreams. She made me feel like I mattered. She also taught me. From the time I was 12, she'd show me her ledgers, explain equity, talk about smart money habits. At the time, I thought it was just another way she loved me. Later, I realized she was preparing me. When I was 17, she helped me apply for scholarships. She proofread my essays, drove me to campus tours, even opened a small savings account in my name and quietly dropped a few $100s in every birthday. My parents refused to contribute a cent to my college dreams. My father laughed when I got accepted to university. My mother said, "Hope you're not expecting us to help." I worked 3 part-time jobs through school. I ate cheap noodles, studied late at night and graduated with a business degree and a lot of determination. By 24, I was working full-time at a real estate firm. By 25, I was managing mid-level portfolios. And then just after my birthday, Elizabeth passed away. I was devastated. I had spoken to her just days earlier. She sounded a little tired but full of life, telling me about her rose bushes and how proud she was of my latest client success. I wasn't ready to lose her. I don't think I ever would have been. At her funeral, my parents cried the loudest. My dad spoke dramatically about how she was the matriarch of the family, and how much she meant to all of us. I remember standing beside her casket looking at him and thinking, you never visited her. You only called when you needed money. The real surprise came a few weeks later at the reading of her will. I sat in the polished office of her lawyer, clutching a tissue. My parents sat beside me wearing their best solemn faces. When the lawyer read that the house on Magnolia Drive, valued at $850,000, was being left entirely to me, not shared, not held in trust but given to me outright, the air in the room shifted. My father clenched his jaw. My mother let out a short, stunned gasp. The lawyer read on, stating that my grandmother had left them a small cash inheritance, around $20,000, as a gesture of kindness. That was it. My dad didn't say anything then, but his face turned to stone. I moved into the house a month later. It felt surreal. I expected to feel guilty, but all I felt was her. Her spirit in the garden, her laughter echoing in the kitchen. The house needed work and I poured love into every repair. I paid for renovations myself, carefully restoring and updating, turning it into a space that reflected her values and mine. Then came the manipulation. At first my parents visited occasionally, then more frequently. Then they asked if they could stay for a few weeks while they looked for a new place. Weeks turned into months. Suddenly they were acting like it was their home. My dad would walk into my office unannounced, commenting on my decor choices. My mom replaced artwork with cheap knickknacks she bought online. I tried to set boundaries. Please check with me before changing things. That led to eye rolls and guilt tripping. Family doesn't need permission, my mom said. You're being selfish, my dad added. They referred to it as our house to neighbors. They made plans for additions. My mother even brought over a contractor to give quotes on expanding the kitchen without asking me. I was drowning in silent resentment, but part of me still hoped they'd change. I still wanted their approval. And then they told me about their big dream, a 3-month European vacation. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. They'd never traveled outside the country. My father looked me dead in the eye and said, "We were thinking we could use the equity in the house. You could take out a loan." "You mean my house?" "Don't be petty," my mother snapped. "It was your grandmother's. It belongs to the family." I refused to take a loan, but I foolishly agreed to help with the expenses. Flights, hotels, cash for sightseeing. I covered most of it. They promised they'd be frugal, said it was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I told myself I was doing something kind. I told myself they'd appreciate me. They didn't. Which brings me back to that call. I had called my dad to ask where he stored the faucet warranty. The kitchen was leaking and he had installed it himself. He answered from Paris, annoyed. He gave a short answer and hung up, or so he thought. But the call was still active. I heard them talking. My mother asked who it was. "Emma. Complaining about the house again," he said, his voice muffled. "They talked about me like I was an inconvenience. Like I was ungrateful." Then he said it. "She's always been a burden." My mother agreed. They laughed. And then they planned. They would come back, pressure me into signing over the deed or at least adding them to it. My dad said they could guilt me, and if that didn't work they'd mention nursing homes, health problems. "She wants our approval," he said. "That's her weakness." I sat in silence, holding the phone, my hand shaking. Something inside me cracked open. Not just from the pain of hearing those words, but from the realization that it had always been like this. I had just refused to see it. That night I opened a blank document on my computer and titled it, "Exit Plan." And I started to write. I didn't sleep that night. The words kept circling in my mind like vultures. She's always been a burden. It wasn't just what he said, it was how casually he said it. Like it had always been true. Like it was a fact. I stayed up replaying that call over and over again until the numbness gave way to fire. They didn't love me. They used me. All the guilt trips, the manipulation, the constant erosion of my boundaries. None of it had been accidental. They were building something on top of me and I'd let them. But no more. I pulled out every document I had, Grandma's will, the deed to the house, bank statements, receipts for the house repairs, screenshots of all my travel bookings for their vacation, and most importantly the audio recording. I copied the recording to a secure cloud folder and also emailed it to myself. I didn't know exactly how things would unfold, but I knew one thing for certain. I needed to protect myself. By morning I was no longer the obedient daughter desperate for love. I was a woman preparing for war. The first call I made was to Patricia Winters, a lawyer I trusted and had worked with on a few real estate cases. I explained everything, carefully sticking to the facts. She listened without judgment, occasionally asking for clarifications. When I finished, there was a pause before she spoke. "Emma," she said, her voice calm but firm, "you are under no legal obligation to your parents. The house is yours. The title is clean, you've maintained all ownership responsibilities and they've never contributed financially. They have no legal claim." I exhaled slowly. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. "What about their stuff?" I asked. "Can I move it out?" "Legally, you should provide written notice and give them an opportunity to retrieve their belongings. If you're concerned about conflict, placing their items in a storage unit is a reasonable and documentable option." I thanked her and hung up. I wasn't going to do anything illegal. I was going to do this right. But I was going to do it. No second thoughts. Next, I called Marcus Wilson, a senior agent at my firm who had a reputation for handling delicate property transactions. Divorces, estate battles, quick liquidations. He was the guy who could sell a house without leaving a single trace of drama in the neighborhood. "I need to sell my house," I told him over coffee the next day. "Fast. Quiet. No public listings. No signs in the yard. And I want it done in 6 weeks." His eyebrows rose. "That's a tight window, Emma. You're gonna lose some on the price." "I know," I said. "I don't care." He studied me for a moment and then nodded. "Tell me everything." I did. The betrayal, the call, the manipulation. I didn't even cry this time. I'd already burned through those tears. He didn't offer pity. He offered a solution. I know a couple of pre-qualified buyers looking in that range. I can set up private showings by the end of next week. But you'll need to get the place emptied. That's already in motion, I told him. I had found a furnished apartment about 2 hours away in a quiet neighborhood, temporary but clean, safe, and mine. I hired 2 separate moving companies. One for my things, one for theirs. I inventoried every item in the house. Labeled boxes. Photographed everything. Anything that wasn't 100% mine went into the second pile. Then I rented a storage unit under their names, prepaid 6 months, and included a note with the access code, storage terms, and a contact number for retrieval. I also changed my phone number, opened a new bank account, and transferred all funds out of the joint one I'd stupidly opened to help pay for their trip. I closed that account. I even got a new email address. My entire digital footprint scrubbed clean. 3 days before the showing started, I found a letter in one of Grandma Elizabeth's old keepsake boxes. A letter addressed to me, dated just weeks before her death. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Emma," it began, "I know this house will be a blessing to you, but I also worry it may become a burden if others try to take from you what you have rightfully earned. Your parents have always had expectations without effort. You, my sweet girl, have done the opposite. You've worked for everything without expecting anything in return. I trust you'll use this house wisely. Don't let guilt decide your future. You owe no one the life you've built through your own strength." I cried then. Not out of sadness, but because for the first time in weeks I felt understood. The house went on private showing the following Monday. Marcus brought in 3 serious buyers. 2 made offers within days. I accepted one from a corporate executive relocating from Chicago. $915,000. Slightly under market, but for me, it was more than enough. Closing was set for 3 weeks later. That gave me time to finish moving, finalize all the documentation, and prepare for the final act. I left their storage information on the dining room table, next to a handwritten note. Surprise. A burden did this. The day of closing, I wore my best navy blazer and a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. At the title office, Marcus handed me the check. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. "I'm free," I said. "That's more than okay." Later that afternoon, I stood alone in the empty house one last time. No photos. No noise. No misplaced furniture. Just echoes and memories. I walked room to room, thanking it for what it had given me. Refuge, clarity, and finally the strength to walk away. And then I locked the door behind me, dropped the keys through the mail slot, and walked into a life that was finally my own. The day after I created my exit plan document, I called Patricia Winters, a family lawyer I had worked with during several real estate transactions at my firm. Patricia didn't do hand-holding or sugarcoating, which is exactly what I needed. I explained the situation as clearly and unemotionally as I could. The house was solely in my name. I had paid every bill, funded every renovation, and my parents had never contributed a cent. Patricia listened, occasionally asking pointed follow-up questions. When I finished, she said, "Emma, legally you're in the clear. They have no claim. They're not on the deed, and they haven't paid rent or made financial contributions. You're not married to them. They're not protected tenants. You can ask them to leave. Even if they've been living there for almost 4 years?" I asked. "Even then. But I recommend being smart about it. Document everything. Keep records of what belongs to who. If you're going to ask them to leave, give written notice, even if it's not legally required. And if you're planning to sell the house, do it cleanly." That was all I needed to hear. I hung up, opened my exit plan document again, and began adding bullet points. First, I'd need to catalog the contents of the house. I spent the next few days going room by room, creating a spreadsheet. What I had brought in, what had belonged to my grandmother, and what my parents had brought with them. If I couldn't clearly prove it was mine, I assigned it to them. Next, I met with Marcus Wilson, a senior agent at my real estate firm known for his discretion. We sat down over coffee and I laid it all out for him. "I need to sell my house," I said. Quietly. No signs, no open houses. Preferably before my parents return from Europe in 3 weeks. Marcus blinked. "You want to sell it while they're gone?" "Yes." "I'm serious." He nodded slowly. "It'll cut the sale price a little. Quick sales always do. but I can make it happen. He pulled out his tablet and took notes as we discussed pricing. The house had appreciated significantly since my grandmother bought it. Marcus estimated we could list it for $980,000 but might need to accept a lower offer for a quick close. You'll probably land somewhere around $900,000 to $915,000 if we move fast. That was fine. More than fine. Back at home I made more moves. I found a furnished rental apartment 2 hours away. Month-to-month lease, utilities included. I opened a new bank account at an institution my parents had never used. I changed my phone number. I transferred my investments and insurance policies to accounts they didn't have access to. In the evenings I packed. I kept my things neat and separate. My parents' belongings went into boxes labeled clearly with their names and placed in a rented storage unit under their name. I prepaid 6 months and left access instructions with the facility manager. I documented everything. While organizing, I came across a stack of letters in my grandmother's handwriting, tucked into an old recipe binder. One of them was addressed to me. Dated a month before she passed, it read, "My dearest Emma, I know I won't be around forever and there are some things I want to say. You've always been my pride. You've worked harder than anyone I know, and I'm leaving you my home because I know you'll honor it. I worry that your parents might try to make you feel guilty, but I want you to remember something. The house is yours. Use it however you choose, not out of obligation but out of strength. You are not a burden. You are a blessing." I cried reading that letter. Then I read it again. Her voice, so clear, cut through the self-doubt I hadn't realized was still there. I tucked it into a folder with the deed and my other important documents. Marcus lined up 3 private showings. 2 of the buyers made offers. I accepted the higher one, $915,000 with a 2-week close. On the morning of the closing, I wore my sharpest blazer and drove to the title office. Marcus handed me the final papers. I signed every document with a steady hand. There were no second thoughts. No guilt. Just calm. The check hit my new bank account that afternoon. The next morning, movers arrived. My things went into a truck bound for my new apartment. My parents' boxes were delivered to the storage unit. I walked through the empty house once more, touching the door frames, the old banister, the garden gate. Then I left a note on the counter. Surprise. A burden did this. I locked the door, dropped the keys through the mail slot and drove away. 2 days later, my parents came home from Europe. The first voicemail arrived at 4:36 p.m. "Emma, what's going on? The key doesn't work. Call us." The second one, angrier. "Emma, the house is empty. Where's everything? What have you done?" The third, guilt-laced, "Sweetheart, we're worried. Please just tell us you're safe." I didn't respond. Texts followed. Then emails. Then phone calls to my office. I'd warned my boss. She told them I was on leave and wouldn't take personal calls. They threatened legal action. They called me cruel. My mother left a voice message crying about being homeless. I forwarded everything to Patricia, who told me I had nothing to worry about. "They're shocked," she said. "But they'll calm down. They're just realizing they can't control you anymore." He was right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't under their roof, their rules, or their guilt. I was free. The silence I offered wasn't revenge. It was protection. From them, from my past, from slipping back into the child I used to be. Compliant, hungry for their approval, always trying to be enough. The quiet after their rage and guilt-laced voicemails was oddly soothing. But it wouldn't last. A week after their return, they showed up at my real estate office. I got a text from Jamie, one of the receptionists. "Your parents are here. Causing a scene. Boss told them you're on vacation. Want us to call security." My stomach twisted. I replied quickly, "If they don't leave in 5 minutes, yes. Thank you." They left before security was needed, but the message was clear. They weren't going to let go easily. Later that day, my boss called me directly. "Emma, they made a big scene. Claimed you sold their house." I shut it down. "But are you okay?" I explained the situation briefly, trying to remain professional. It was my grandmother's home. She left it to me and only me. I let them live there out of guilt. I heard them say I was a burden. I had to protect myself. There was a pause. Then she said, "Take as much time as you need. And for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." That night, they found a way to email me. It was long, manipulative, and filled with half-truths. They claimed I'd misunderstood the phone call. That they were joking. That I'd broken their hearts. But they were willing to forgive me if I bought a new house where we could all live together. They even attached real estate listings. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Patricia. Her response: documented manipulation attempt. Do not engage. You're in the clear. I didn't block them, yet. I wanted a paper trail. I saved every message, every voicemail, every email. Eventually, they started reaching out to old neighbors, my college alumni directory, even distant relatives. I got a call from my cousin Jenna, who sounded awkward. Your parents reached out. They said you kicked them out without warning. I didn't know what to say. Tell them I'm safe and that's all they need to know, I said simply. Jenna paused. You're not crazy. I heard what your dad said about the house at Aunt Linda's party last year. Like it already belonged to them. It was validating but also sad. They had probably never seen me as an individual, just a fallback plan. 3 weeks later, I received a legal letter. Not from a real attorney but a template downloaded online. A notice of retaliation for unlawful eviction. Patricia laughed when I showed it to her. They don't even have the terminology right. This would be thrown out in 5 seconds. Still good to keep on file. Then came the inevitable call. My mother crying again. This time her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. Emma, please. We're your parents. We made mistakes but we love you. We're staying in a motel. We have nowhere else to go. I stared at the voicemail on my screen, feeling nothing. Maybe a year ago it would have broken me. Now it felt like a script they'd used too many times. My therapist, Dr. Palmer, had called this out early. They're using financial guilt and emotional manipulation as levers of control. It's a form of financial abuse. When she first said the term, I resisted. Abuse? It felt too strong. Too final. But now it felt exactly right. Using love as a currency. Making me earn their affection. Turning inheritance into obligation. They drained me for years. So I stayed quiet. I focused on my work, which was flourishing. Without the stress of walking on eggshells in my own home, I closed more deals than ever. My clients trusted me. I explained contracts thoroughly, protected their interests and reminded them of their worth. One newlywed couple told me, "You make us feel like we're not just buying a house. You're helping us build our future." I smiled. When I wasn't working, I explored my new city. I found a yoga class I actually liked. I reconnected with Megan, a college friend my parents had always disliked for being too independent. She reminded me who I used to be before I got worn down trying to be someone else. At dinner one night, she raised her wine glass. To Emma, the only person I know who can sell a house out from under her own parents and still come out looking like the adult. I laughed. For the first time it wasn't bitter. Just real. Still, I knew a final confrontation was coming. And when it came, it was as dramatic as I expected. Rachel, a former neighbor, called me one morning. "Emma, your parents are sitting outside the house. The new owners aren't home. They've been there for over an hour. Just parked. Staring at it." I thanked her and immediately called Richard, the new homeowner. He was concerned but understanding. "I'll let the security company know. Appreciate the heads up." That same night, I got a message from an unknown number. "Meet us tomorrow. 10 a.m. Maple Street Cafe. If you don't come, we're going to your office." It was signed with just one word. Dad. I didn't reply. But I would be there. I arrived at Maple Street Cafe at exactly 10:15 a.m., 15 minutes late on purpose. I wanted them to wait to sit in their own discomfort. After all the manipulation and betrayal, a little delay was the least they could endure. As I stepped inside, the familiar smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries momentarily distracted me, but the sight of them brought it all rushing back. My mother was twisting a paper napkin in her hands, her lips pressed into a worried line. My father, on the other hand, stared coldly at his coffee, jaw clenched like he was preparing for a battle. I walked over slowly, my heels clicking against the tiled floor with a calm, deliberate rhythm. Hidden in the pocket of my coat, my phone was already recording. Just in case. "Robert. Diana," I said evenly as I reached the table. I didn't use Mom or Dad. They hadn't earned that title anymore. My mother visibly flinched at the sound of her first name, but my father just lifted his eyes, already brimming with accusation. "Emma, please," my mother said, gesturing toward the empty seat. Her voice was too sweet, too rehearsed, as if this was just a misunderstanding we'd clear up over coffee. I sat, keeping my back straight and my expression neutral. You wanted a conversation. I'm here. My father wasted no time. You sold our house. No, I said firmly. I sold my house. The one my grandmother left to me. The one that was never yours. My mother's eyes welled up with tears on cue. She leaned forward, voice trembling just enough to seem genuine. How could you do this to us? We're your parents. I met her gaze. Parents don't call their daughter a burden. Parents don't plan to take what doesn't belong to them. I heard everything. My father scoffed. You misunderstood. We were venting. People say things when they're tired. You weren't tired, I replied, slowly pulling out my phone and tapping play. You were plotting. The recording played clearly, crisp and unmistakable. She's been a burden from the start, my father's voice said. Eventually she'll sign the house over to us. My mother turned pale. My father's face reddened with fury. He slammed his hand on the table, making a few heads in the cafe turn. You recorded us? You left the line open, I said coldly. And I recorded it because I knew you'd lie about it. The tension around us grew thick. Other patrons were pretending not to listen but couldn't look away. I didn't care. This isn't just about a house, I said, keeping my voice calm. This is about years of manipulation. You've treated me like your backup retirement plan. I let you live in that house rent-free for 4 years. I paid the bills. I made the repairs. I covered your entire European vacation. And all the while, you were calling me a burden and planning to take the one thing my grandmother gave me. My mother dabbed at her eyes. We didn't mean it that way. It's just talk. We were stressed. You were scheming, I snapped. Don't insult my intelligence. My father leaned in, his voice low and threatening. You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for us. We raised you, fed you, got you through school. You constantly reminded me how much I cost you, I replied. You made sure I felt like a financial drain every step of the way. Grandma saw through it. That's why she gave me the house, not you. My mother's sobs turned louder, less convincing. We've lost everything. You sold our home. It was never your home, I repeated slowly. You didn't contribute a cent. You treated it like yours while I paid every bill. I offered you safety and dignity. You planned to betray me. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. You'll regret this. You think you're free? You're a selfish little girl who just destroyed her family. I stood too, folding my coat over my arm. What I destroyed was your illusion of control. The house is sold. Your belongings are in storage. You have 6 months to collect them. After that, they're gone. If you contact me outside legal channels, I will file for a restraining order. My mother reached out. Emma, please, don't do this. We're still your family. Then you should have acted like it, I said. I'm done being your safety net. I turned and walked out. The air outside was crisp, a breeze tugging at my hair as I exhaled the weight of the last decade. That day I wasn't their daughter. I wasn't a burden. I was finally, irrevocably free. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Relief mixed with sadness and freedom tangled with grief. I wasn't mourning them, I was mourning what I had hoped we could be. There would be no loving reconciliation. No tearful understanding. There would only be distance. I spent more time in therapy that week. Dr. Palmer helped me process the interaction. You didn't destroy your family, Emma, she said gently. You ended a cycle of emotional manipulation. That's not selfish. That's survival. Still, I kept replaying my father's final words. You'll regret this. But regret never came. What came instead was clarity. I had made the right decision. My grandmother had trusted me with that house because she believed I'd protect what she built. And I had. Not just the bricks and mortar, but the values, the independence, the courage. Weeks later, I received another email from them. This time it wasn't even emotional. Just cold legal threats. They claimed they had tenant rights. That I had sold the house without their consent. I forwarded it to Patricia. She replied within the hour. They're grasping at straws. Let them hire a lawyer. This won't hold in court. That gave me peace. But more than that, it gave me permission to move forward. I'd already started house hunting for myself. Smaller, more modern. Something that was mine, Not inherited, not haunted by old fights. A clean slate. And I wasn't alone. Megan had been my rock through it all. She cheered me on, helped me pick out new furniture, and reminded me what real friendship looked like. One night we sat on the floor of my empty condo, eating takeout and drinking wine from mugs. "You know," she said, "you're kind of a badass." I laughed. "I don't feel like one." "You will." "Maybe I would. Not today. But soon." What I knew for sure was this: I was no one's burden. Not anymore. I was the woman who reclaimed her life, her home, her power. And I was just getting started. A month after the confrontation at Maple Street Cafe, the fog began to lift. I had finally moved into my new condo. 2 bedrooms, modern fixtures, and big windows that flooded every room with sunlight. It wasn't a mansion or a grand inheritance like Grandma's house, but it was mine. Entirely, unmistakably mine. No ghosts of manipulation haunted the walls. No echoes of guilt or debt clung to the furniture. Just quiet, simple freedom. I started every morning the same way. Coffee on the balcony, wrapped in a soft robe, watching the world move below me. Some mornings I would still think about them, my parents. The ache hadn't disappeared. I'd just settled. Like a scar. I hadn't heard from them since their last failed attempt to threaten legal action. I guess their bravado had run out when they realized Patricia was more than capable of shutting their claims down. And maybe they finally realized I wasn't coming back. Not this time. Therapy with Dr. Palmer had become the cornerstone of my week. She challenged me in ways I didn't expect, making me question not just their actions but my own patterns. Why had I tolerated so much for so long? Why had I been so afraid to say no? "Because you were taught that love is something you earn," she said during one session. "And that saying no makes you unlovable." That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. But now, in this new chapter, I was trying to rewrite the rules. I didn't owe anyone my silence. I didn't owe love to people who weaponized it. I threw myself into work. The real estate firm had welcomed me back with open arms after my brief hiatus, and I was more determined than ever. I found myself gravitating toward clients who were also navigating transitions. Divorces, losses, first homes after bad relationships. I understood them. I knew what it felt like to start over. One client, a woman named Celia, burst into tears during a showing. She had just finalized her divorce after 20 years and was afraid she couldn't do this alone. "You're not alone," I told her gently. "You're starting something new. That's brave." She blinked through her tears. "How do you know?" I smiled. "Because I just did it." Helping her find her home helped me heal a little more. Megan, ever the champion of fresh starts, helped me celebrate every tiny victory. When I finally hung the last piece of art on my wall, she brought over champagne. "To freedom," she said, raising her glass. "To boundaries," I added. "To never being anyone's burden again." We clinked glasses and laughed, the sound light and full. But not every day was easy. There were nights when I stared at the ceiling, wondering if they ever missed me. Wondering if they felt even an ounce of remorse. Wondering if I'd ever see an apology that didn't come wrapped in guilt or conditions. One night, a message came through my new email. Subject: "Still your parents." I froze. The address was unfamiliar, but I recognized the wording immediately. "You just want to talk." No lawyers. No yelling. Just talk. "We didn't realize how much we hurt you. It was never our intention. Please. Just one dinner. Just to talk. Love. Mom and Dad." I stared at the message for a long time. It was manipulative, framed as peace but built on guilt. No acknowledgement of their words. No apology. Just a plea for connection on their terms. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Patricia. "Just documenting," I wrote. "No action needed. Yet." She replied within the hour. "Good call. Let me know if they escalate." They didn't. Not then. But the message lingered. Weeks passed. I focused on work, therapy, and finding joy in the ordinary. I hosted a dinner party. My first. Just 6 people. Megan, a couple from work, and 2 new friends I'd made through a local book club. We cooked together, laughed over wine, and ended the night playing board games on the living room floor. For the first time in ages, my laughter felt unfiltered. I didn't have to shrink myself to fit into anyone's expectations. I didn't have to apologize for taking up space. A few days later, I visited Grandma's grave. The last time I'd come, it had been to say goodbye to her house. This time I just wanted to talk. I sat by the headstone brushing away leaves. I did it, Grandma, I whispered. I walked away. I didn't let them take it from me. I sold the house. I started over. The wind rustled gently through the trees. I imagined her nodding. I wish you could see it. My new place. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. And I think you'd like the sunroom. It reminds me of your old garden. I sat there for an hour talking through my fears, my hopes, the tiny victories she would have celebrated with me. When I finally stood to leave, I felt lighter. On the way home, I stopped at a local nursery and picked up a potted magnolia tree. It wasn't quite the towering beauty that stood in Grandma's yard, but it was a start. I placed it by the window in my condo where the sunlight hit just right. Every morning, I made a habit of watering it, whispering little mantras as I did. I'm not a burden. I deserve safety. I deserve love without conditions. It wasn't magic. It didn't erase years of pain. But it grounded me. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter. The return address was my parents' apartment complex. My stomach twisted. I opened it cautiously. We visited the old house. The new owners are doing some kind of renovation. It looks different. It doesn't feel like home anymore. We've been thinking a lot about what you said. You were right to be angry. We didn't treat you fairly. We made you feel small, like you owed us everything, and that was wrong. We don't expect forgiveness. We just hope that someday maybe you'll let us try again. Love. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was something. I didn't write back. Not yet. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not in the trash, not on display. Just waiting. Until I was ready. Because I had learned something important. Forgiveness doesn't have to be immediate. Healing doesn't follow anyone else's timeline. I was allowed to choose my own pace. And for now that meant choosing peace. The weeks rolled by quietly after the letter from my mother, each day stretching out with a peaceful rhythm I hadn't known I craved. My routine had solidified. Early mornings with coffee and journaling, afternoons packed with showings and contracts, and evenings spent either in therapy, reading, or simply breathing, something I used to forget to do. But peace, I learned, doesn't mean silence. Nor does it mean isolation. Healing required that I keep showing up for myself, day after day. And one day it meant facing the past again in a way I didn't see coming. It started with a phone call from my Aunt Judith, my grandmother's sister, who I hadn't seen since the funeral. Emma? It's Judith, she said, her voice gentle but laced with concern. I saw your name in the local real estate paper. You're doing well. Your grandma would be so proud. I smiled, feeling warmth spread in my chest. Thank you. That means more than I can say. There was a pause. I've been thinking about you. And about Elizabeth. I have something that belongs to you. Something she gave me to hold on to just in case. That weekend I drove out to Judith's house, nestled in a sleepy town on the edge of a lake. It was cozy, lined with ivy and humming with bees in the garden. The kind of place that radiated calm. She greeted me with a hug and ushered me inside. The living room smelled like lavender and old books. Come, she said, leading me to a chest tucked behind her worn reading chair. She pulled out a weathered envelope with my name written in Grandma's looping handwriting. She wrote this 6 months before she passed. Said it was for when the time felt right. Hands trembling, I opened it. My dearest Emma. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you've probably faced more than I ever wanted you to. I hope you're okay. I hope the house brought you comfort, not conflict. But if it did bring conflict, then I want you to remember this. You owe no one your peace. Especially not those who try to buy it with guilt. You were always so strong, Emma. Even when you didn't feel like it. You saw through things others couldn't. You carried weight you shouldn't have. That's why I gave you the house. Not because of duty or favoritism, but because I trusted you to know when to protect yourself. I pray you never let anyone make you feel like a burden. You are a blessing. Love always, Grandma. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes, tears slipping quietly down my cheeks. It felt like she was there again, reminding me that the choices I made weren't betrayals. They were acts of self-preservation. Judith placed a hand on my shoulder. Your grandmother saw through your parents long ago. She always said you were the one who'd break the cycle. We sat and talked for hours that afternoon. About Grandma's childhood, her struggles as a widow, how she built everything from the ground up. She taught herself real estate, Judith said proudly. She didn't just leave you a house. She left you her fight. Those words stayed with me long after I left. Back in the city, life continued. Calm, productive, meaningful. I launched the financial autonomy workshop I'd been planning for months. The first session had a dozen attendees. The second, nearly 30. Word spread fast. People wanted tools to protect their finances and their hearts. One woman stood up during the third session, voice shaking. My brother convinced me to co-sign a mortgage I couldn't afford. When I tried to back out, he said I didn't love him enough to help. I felt her pain like it was my own. That's not love, I told her. That's leverage. The group nodded. That day I realized how universal this pain was. So many people had been raised to equate love with sacrifice, to believe that giving up your boundaries was a sign of care. But love, real love, should never cost your sense of self. As the workshops grew, so did my confidence. I was no longer just healing, I was helping others do the same. One evening, I received an unexpected text from Megan. You'll never believe who showed up at my job. My stomach sank. Your parents. They asked if I knew where you were. I told them I hadn't seen you in months. They left a note. Want me to burn it? I almost said yes. But curiosity won. The note arrived the next day via courier. It was short. Emma, we heard about your workshops. People are talking. We're glad you're doing well. We've made mistakes. Maybe one day we'll find our way back to each other. Love, Mom and Dad. No threats. No demands. Just a hint of something different. I didn't respond. I didn't burn it either. I simply placed it beside the letter from Grandma. Some days I imagined a future where reconciliation might be possible, built not on guilt or obligation but on growth and understanding. But that day hadn't come yet. Instead, I focused on building a legacy Grandma would be proud of. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a statewide real estate conference. My topic, ethical boundaries and financial empowerment. It felt surreal stepping onto a stage to share my story. Carefully, anonymously, but truthfully. I lost a house to save my peace, I told the audience. And in doing so, I gained myself. The crowd applauded. Some even cried. Afterwards, a young woman approached me with red eyes and a shaking voice. My dad made me feel like I owed him my career. That if I didn't support his business, I was ungrateful. I hugged her. You don't owe anyone your dreams. When I got home that night, I lit a candle and sat in front of the magnolia tree by the window. It had grown taller, lusher. Resilient. Like me. I opened my journal and wrote. Today I taught a room full of people how to protect themselves. Not just financially but emotionally. Grandma would have called it, tending the garden. Teaching others to bloom in safe soil. Summer settled in quietly, the days long and golden, the nights soft and humming with the sound of crickets. My calendar filled with workshop dates and property tours, and my new life felt stitched together by purpose, not survival. But with growth comes space, and in that space, memories sometimes wandered back in like ghosts. One morning in July, I opened my email to find a subject line that made my breath hitch. Estate Inquiry, Elizabeth Davis. My heart pounded. I clicked. It was from a lawyer representing a distant cousin, one I hadn't seen since childhood. He claimed he was reviewing past records for tax purposes and wanted to verify property disposition related to the family estate. The house. It had been nearly a year since I sold it. A lifetime, really. But the mention of Grandma's estate reminded me how deeply the ripples still moved through the family pond. I called my attorney, Patricia. Standard stuff, she assured me. Families get nosy when money changes hands. You've already closed everything by the book. Just forward me the email and I'll handle it. So it stayed with me. Not fear. Not regret. Just the weight of the legacy Grandma had left. Not just the house but the truth no one wanted to face. That she chose me. That she knew what my parents were. That the property they all assumed would be theirs had gone to the one person who saw her as more than a wallet. I thought again about the last note my parents sent me. We've made mistakes. Maybe one day. Maybe. But not now. Instead, I focused on preparing for the biggest workshop I'd hosted yet. Over 60 people had signed up. Women, men, couples, single parents. Every one of them had a story. The room was packed, buzzing with energy. I stood at the front in a cobalt blue blazer Grandma would have loved. Today's topic, I began, is the invisible price tags people place on your boundaries. Gasps. Nods. The sound of pens on paper. Financial manipulation isn't always about money, I said. It's about control. Guilt. Fear. It's when love is used like a receipt. Look what I did for you, now you owe me. I watched as eyes lit up with recognition. Some welled with tears. One woman raised her hand. How do you know when it's okay to walk away? Even if it's family. I paused. When staying costs you your peace. When giving more means losing yourself. When they mistake your love for a blank check. That's when. Applause followed. Not loud, but the kind that swelled from people finally feeling seen. Afterward, a man waited by the door as the room emptied. Late 50s, kind eyes, a slight tremor in his hand. I'm sorry to bother you, he said. I just wanted to say, thank you. My daughter brought me here. Said I needed to hear it. I always thought providing was enough. But I guess I never asked what she needed protection from. I smiled. It's never too late to ask. Or to listen. He nodded and walked out. I sat down and let the silence wrap around me. Back home I found myself craving Grandma's handwriting again. I pulled out her last letter, reading it like scripture. You owe no one your peace. I said the words aloud this time, letting them settle in the quiet apartment like a prayer. A week later I received another note. This time from my mother. Not a courier. Not a forced message through a friend. Just an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside. Emma. We saw your name in the newspaper again. The workshops. The conference. People say you're helping others find strength. I don't know if we deserve to reach out. I don't even know if this will reach you. But I'm writing anyway. Not to ask for anything. Just to say I'm sorry. Truly. For the things I said. For the things I let him say. For not protecting you. For trying to hold on to something that was never mine. We lost a house. But we lost you first. And I think maybe that's what hurts more. I hope you're happy. Even if we're not part of that. Love, Mom. I read it once. Then again. And again. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't guilt-laced. It was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever seen from her. I didn't rush to respond. But I didn't throw it away either. That night I dreamed of Grandma. We were in her garden again, kneeling beside the rose bushes. She handed me pruning shears and said, cut the dead parts back. Let it bloom. I woke up crying, but not from sadness. Grief, I realized, wasn't about clinging. It was about clearing. Making space for what comes next. At my next therapy session I read the letter aloud. Dr. Palmer listened, then asked, what do you feel reading that? Sad, I said. And strangely, seen. Just a little. Do you want to write back? I don't know. But I don't want to slam the door. She nodded. Then maybe just open the window. So I did. I wrote a simple letter. I got your note. Thank you for sending it. I don't know what happens next, but I appreciate you saying what you did. Emma. No promises. No reopening old wounds. Just an acknowledgement. A gentle crack in the door. As the months rolled on, I kept building my life. I bought a small cabin in the woods. Not an investment, not a showpiece. Just a place to breathe. To read. To remember. Every month I received stories from people who'd attended the workshops. Emails about cut cords, reclaimed finances, emotional freedom. It was like watching roots take hold across a whole forest. One day I got a package from Aunt Judith. Inside, a framed photo of Grandma holding toddler me on her hip in front of the old house. We were both laughing, sunlight kissing our cheeks. On the back Judith had written, she left you the house because you already carried the home. I placed it on my nightstand. And for the first time in years I didn't feel like something was missing. Autumn came quietly, brushing the tops of trees with amber and gold. The shift in seasons felt symbolic. Like something had completed a cycle within me. I was no longer Emma who sold the house. I was Emma who chose peace. Still, healing isn't linear. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got an unexpected phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering, expecting a telemarketer. Emma? A familiar voice asked. It was Aunt Judith. Hey, I said, surprised. Everything okay? Yes, darling. More than okay. But I wanted to ask if you'd consider coming to the Davis family Thanksgiving this year. I froze. Is this some kind of setup? She chuckled. No tricks. Just an honest invitation. Not everyone will be there and you can leave whenever you want. But your cousins miss you. I miss you. I thought about it. For years, holidays had been a source of obligation and anxiety. My parents always dictated how the days would go, what role I had to play, what smile I needed to wear. But this would be different. I wasn't walking in as a daughter trying to earn love. I'd be walking in as Emma, a woman who had nothing to prove. I'll think about it, I said. Thanksgiving morning I baked an apple pie. Grandma's recipe, the one with brown sugar crumble and nutmeg. I wrapped it in a towel and drove an hour to the small house where Aunt Judith lived. The porch light was already glowing and laughter filtered through the windows. When I stepped inside, the scent of cinnamon and turkey hit me like a memory. Emma. My cousin Lily ran up and hugged me tightly. I wasn't sure if you'd really come. I smiled. Me either. There were a few awkward glances, a few sidelong stares. But overall there was warmth. Familiar faces, familiar stories, all slightly faded by time. Aunt Judith stood beside me in the kitchen as I set the pie down. Your mom asked about you, she said softly. She's still figuring things out. I don't think she expected to lose you the way she did. She didn't lose me by accident, I replied. She gave me away piece by piece. Judith nodded. I know. I just wanted you to know she's not pretending it didn't happen. That was something at least. The day passed quietly. No confrontations. No guilt trips. Just stories and second helpings and music playing low in the background. I even laughed. Real laughter, the kind that bubbles up when you're not bracing for impact. On the drive home I didn't cry. I didn't replay conversations. I didn't question myself. I just drove. The next morning I walked into my office to find a small envelope on my desk. Inside was a handwritten note. Emma, thank you for coming yesterday. It meant more than I can say. Your grandmother would be so proud of the woman you've become. Judith. I pinned it on my bulletin board beside a flyer for my next workshop. Redefining home, healing after family estrangement. Winter brought its quiet stillness and with it reflection. One snowy evening I found myself journaling by the fire, writing not about what had happened but about what was next. I thought about how far I'd come. How I once thought silence was safer than boundaries. How I used to mistake guilt for love. How I had believed, truly believed, that choosing myself was the ultimate betrayal. But now I saw that choosing myself had been the first honest act of love I'd ever performed. That house had once been the battleground of my worth. But I had walked away from it not in defeat but in sovereignty. And the most astonishing thing? I didn't miss it. I didn't miss the furniture or the layout or the history woven into its walls. Because home was never about bricks. It was about freedom. And freedom is what I claimed the day I changed the locks. I closed the journal, the firelight dancing on the page. Outside snow fell like peace.